is just the position that ESG investing puts us in compared to countries like China. The conservative movement in America has been slow to respond to a lot of this.
Had we not been so utterly clueless on the energy front in the West, we would have been able to supply the Chinese with a much more reliable supply of liquid natural gas. So that's a particularly egregious sin on the Canadian front, because our idiot Prime Minister, Trudeau, has done everything he possibly could to shut down the Canadian fossil fuel industry. And all that means is that, well, as you already pointed out, that China has found it necessary so its people don't starve to produce more and more coal plants, which is exactly also what's happening in India. And we could have remediated that to a large degree if we hadn't been so damn foolish for the last 60 years, especially on the nuclear front, but also in relationship to liquid natural gas. And then for all of you who still might be residual environmentalists listening, you better bloody well understand that if we don't build a coal plant in North America or Australia, but we build one in China, it's the same damn air. And so the fact that we're making it impossible for any of these things to occur in the West just means that it's offloaded into another country. And that might be fine if it was only a matter of pollution of rivers, because then the Chinese could deal with that. And, that's a peripheral problem for us, even though it's not trivial. But since they're dumping carbon dioxide into the same damn atmosphere, all this ethical posturing is doing nothing. It's not just not doing good. That's the thing we got to get clear here. These policies are actually making everything worse by the criteria of the people who put the policies in place. And that's just absolutely unacceptable. And it's hard for people to understand what ESG means. And if you first hear about it, it sounds kind of good, because you think, well, those damn greedy corporations should be incentivized to serve more than their narrow self-interest. But then when you start to look at exactly what that means, like the devil's always in the details, you see very clearly that this is just another variant of deeply socialist, centralized state planning. What the hell is going on with these corporations who are bending over backwards to adopt these ideological woke policies when they're clearly enabling like fifth columns of ideologues who are antithetical to absolutely everything they stand for? Like, how do you understand this? Or do you guys even bother trying to sort that sort of thing out?
It's this huge audience of untapped retail investors. And the real, again, the height of hypocrisy on this issue, if we take the social issues, the left is always talking about how important it is to bring up the little guy and the left out and the forgotten. But they're not talking about, the Muslim Uyghurs in China. They're not talking about the African children in the People's Republic of the Congo that are having to mine cobalt for China, in order to produce all of the electric vehicles, all of the lithium batteries for our iPads, phones. These, African children who are making maybe, $1 or $2 a day to cobalt, to mine this dangerous mineral that China, now operates and controls about 60% of the world's cobalt supply. China's been much smarter about owning and buying rich minerals than the United States has. And it's putting us at a huge disadvantage. And that's the other thing that I think a lot of our men and women are concerned about, is just the position that ESG investing puts us in compared to countries like China.
Right. Well, I don't have as much of a problem with BlackRock dealing with the Chinese, because I think the issue of how to include the Chinese in a broad free market economy is one that still requires a tremendous amount of debate. Everybody hoped that China would sort of sort itself out on the democratic front, at least quasi-democratic front, as their population became wealthier and less prone to starvation. And I think to a limited degree that's occurred, although the Chinese have backslid terribly with the pronouncement of Xi as like ruler till the end of time, and their slide back into a real communist totalitarianism. I mean, so it's not exactly as if I'm a China fan, especially not one of the Chinese Communist Party, but I'm more curious about why in the world they bought the entire environmental apocalypse narrative along with the DEI nonsense on the governance or on the social front. Like, what is it about these capitalist enterprises that is tilting them in this woke policy direction? Why, and how can they not see how counterproductive that is, given that they're fundamentally capitalist enterprises? I don't understand it.
Yeah. I don't either, other than they believe it, right? I mean, that's the conclusion you have to come to, is they absolutely believe that it's the right way to go. I think the other thing that I would say is the conservative movement in America has been slow to respond to a lot of this, as they have on other issues. But, I talk to CEOs and C-suite executives on a regular basis who frankly, privately will tell me, thank you for giving us leverage now to say, we're hearing now from both sides, so we're going to stay neutral on this issue, which at the end of the day, that's what these men and women want. That's what these state treasurers and auditors want, is they want banks to be banks.
Right. Do
they
your
want
damn
fund managers
job.
to be fund managers. That's right. Their fiduciary duty calls for them to only work with those companies that are willing to maintain and protect that idea of fiduciary responsibility. And seashore levels are not part of that fiduciary responsibility. That's the argument that the left is trying to make, is that is fiduciary responsibility. And that's what this Biden administration is trying to push out, through the Department of Labor, through rule changes, through the Securities and Exchange Commission, requiring ESG disclosures. They're trying to say that it is fiduciary responsible of you to pay attention and know how
that
much
would be
the
fine
environment's
if they were
impacting.
investing their own money.
That's right.
Right? Because maybe,
right.
If you could make a case that keeping a corporate eye cast on the 20-year horizon, 30-year horizon on the environment front is going to guide your investment decisions in a manner that increases your profitability, no problem, man. If people want to bet on that, that's just fine. But when it starts to become a matter of compulsion and regulation, then nope, you've definitely gone too far.